Hello, welcome to Speaking Effectively. My name is Anjali Gera Roy. I've been teaching for more than a quarter of a century in IIT Kharagpur, and I'm going to teach you a thing or two that I know about speaking and speaking effectively. First of all, I begin with the premise that speaking is an art, but it's also a skill. Some of us are natural speakers in the sense that we instinctively know when to say the right thing and how to say the right thing. And we all marvel at the way some of us can express ourselves so correctly and so aptly. But the majority of us fumble for words. We don't have the right language. We put the pause in the wrong places. We use the wrong tone, and our messages always or half the time misfire. So this course presumes that even though all of us do not have the knack of speaking effectively, we can acquire the skills of speaking effectively and master this skill over a period of time if we are interested. Secondly, in this course I begin with the presumption or the assumption that speaking is not only about speaking logically and clearly as it's assumed in other courses on speaking and about what effective speaking is, but speaking is also about using the right emotions, and speaking is really about getting the message across and getting your work done in the most effective manner. And finally, I wish to say that speaking skills are not monopolized or are not the heritage of any particular group or the speakers of any particular language or any particular social, religious, ethnic or regional group, but they are equally distributed among all classes, castes, genders, nationalities, regions and languages. In fact, in groups where writing is relatively new, script is relatively new, in the more traditional societies which still depend on the spoken word to get their day-to-day transactions done, speaking is almost elevated to an art where even ordinary people have the requisite skills to get their message across orally by the word of mouth in the most effective manner. I could think of ancient Greek society, but I could also think of more tribal societies in India, in other parts of Asia, in Africa, or the Aboriginal people of Australia who have mastered the fine art of conversation and the fine art of speaking orally before a group, face to face before a group. And it's these people who can teach us a lot about how to speak, because having become literate, we have also lost our ability to get our message across through the spoken word. For instance, in Igbo society of Nigeria, among the Igbo people of Nigeria, it's said that the proverbs are the palm oil with which words are eaten. So Igbos conventionally sprinkle their conversations with proverbs to get their message across in the most pithy and most forceful manner. Closer home, let's think of speakers of, say, Bengali in Bengal where I live, where I find that my friendly neighborhood greengrocer also has a basic vocabulary in Sanskritized Hindi, thanks to Bengali being derived from Bengali, modern Bengali, including a lot of difficult Sanskrit words. The kind of vocabulary which an average speaker in the rest of the country who does not have a Sanskritic base or whose language does not have a Sanskritic base is unlikely to possess. Let's move now to the speakers of Urdu, and Urdu as spoken in Lucknow, to see that how the Nawabi adab or the Nawabi culture of pehle aap, and the polite conversation, idiomatic conversation, is percolated to the rickshaw puller who carries you across the chalk and narrates the history of chalk to you in pure Khalis Urdu spoken by the Nawabs. This course is for those who wish to express their thoughts, ideas and emotions clearly and effectively in English. And I'll say why in English, why this course is only targeting speaking effectively in English rather than in other languages, in one-to-one situations, in a group or before a group. It begins by addressing issues in basic speaking and conversational skills before guiding learners to make effective presentations. So, the objectives of this course are to understand what effective speaking is, particularly focusing on English speaking skills, to understand the difference between speaking and writing, to learn to use verbal and non-verbal symbols, to be able to use simple structures in colloquial functional English, to be able to speak effectively one-to-one, in a group and before a group. Now, I have the course outline before you. It's a longish outline. We have an 8-module course, and in each module we have 5 units. And just to give you a taste of what is to come, I would quickly read out some of the topics which I would cover in the modules. In the first week, that is today, we begin by an introduction to speaking and begin with the first topic, which is the art of speaking. From there, we move on to encoding meaning through verbal and non-verbal symbols, which is something which speaking shares with writing. The third unit will be about verbal communication. Fourth unit will also look at how words work, and the fifth unit in the first module, the final unit in the first module, will look at how to use words. So, in the first module, apart from the introduction, we are also looking at the use of verbal symbols, and which are shared across, which are distributed and common to both speaking and writing. In the second module, we move on to meta communication, not non-verbal communication, but meta communication, and I'll later go into what meta communication means. Nature, function and types of non-verbal communication. In unit 2 of module 2, we go to the importance of non-verbal communication in speaking. In unit 3, we look at body language, eye communication, facial expression, gesture, posture and movements, dress and appearance. We continue in the unit 4. And unit 5 will focus exclusively on para language. Week 3, module 3, we move on to phonetics, which is the science of sounds. And after having introduced to basic phonetics, I'll guide you through the sounds of English, first with vowels. From there, I'll go on in the unit that follows into diphthongs and consonants. In unit 4, I move on to stress and rhythm, and in the final unit, I go into intonation, pause and modulation. In week 4, we will look at the relationship between voice and personality. The most important component in speaking, apart from words, is voice and delivery. So, we will look at I'll give you tips on how to improve your voice, and in the unit that follows, we'll look at how to improve delivery. In unit 4 of week 4 or module 4, we look at pace, pitch, volume, and in the concluding unit of module 4, we would look at modulation, resonance, use of removal of non-words, enunciation and so on. In module 5, we move on to more advanced speaking skills. Having mastered the sounds and basic units like sounds and words, now we move on to more advanced activities such as basic conversational skills. And in these basic conversational skills, I include giving and receiving instructions, asking for information, making requests and accepting, conceding to requests, agreeing and disagreeing, and making recommendations. In week 4, since it's a tiered course, we move on to a more very advanced activity, which is group discussions and effective meetings. The second unit will be about participating in a meeting, and the third unit will be about chairing a meeting. In unit 4, we will analyze an ill-conducted meeting, and in unit 5, we will analyze together a well-conducted meeting. In module 7, I move on to interviewing skills, which is of great interest, particularly to people who are looking for jobs, but also for those who may not be looking for jobs, but who have other situations in which they have to make an impression and they have to interact with people one-to-one and make negotiations, make deals, and so on. So the first one will be, the second unit will be about appearing in an interview. How does one appear in an interview? And the second one will be about conducting an interview. How does one conduct an interview? In unit 4 and 5, like in meeting skills, we'll first analyze a good interview and then we'll analyze a bad interview. And the concluding module 8, we will look at how to make successful presentations. 2 parts in unit 1 and 2. We'll then move on to analysis of a bad presentation and then to analysis of a good presentation. We'll have 2 modules devoted to that. Now, I must remind you that each of these modules will be followed by assignments. The assignments will be based on activities related to the modules, so that you not only master the concepts introduced in the lectures, but actually get to practice the concepts discussed and actually get to practice the activities introduced in the lecture, which you need to rehearse several times in order to be able to master those skills. So the onus of making something out of this course and learning something is equally yours. My responsibility is to introduce you to what is good speaking and share some tips with you how you can improve your speaking. But unless you put in the equal amount of practicing these skills, we will not be able to get the results that we are aspiring to get. So my request to you is that if you are enrolling in this course, please take the assignments and the activities as seriously as listening to the lectures. Now I come to the art of speaking, and to show what art of speaking in English in particular, and why, as I'm speaking mainly to Indian speakers of English, why we need to master the art of speaking English, unlike other languages in which most of us are very fluent and some of us are able to express ourselves very effectively in our own mother tongue. But when it comes to articulation or articulateness in English language, we fail miserably. I've come across several people, I've heard them participate in informal conversations, and I've watched them holding the entire group in thrall through their witticisms, through their use of unusual phrases, through the way they control pause and modulation, and through the way they modulate their voice or deliver the narrative, and in the whole, the way they control the conversation, the skills with which they control the whole conversation. You find people are sitting spellbound listening to such speakers, and I'm sure in your own neighborhood or in your own group of friends or group of colleagues, you have such individuals who instinctively have the knack for making any subject interesting in the way they narrate that subject. Okay. But I find that when I ask the same people to make a presentation in English or narrate the same account in English, they falter miserably, they fail miserably. The reason is because the same skills that you need in expressing yourself in your mother tongue are not appropriate when you are expressing yourself in English. So, this is what we will be doing in the course, that we are assuming that you know how to speak your mother tongue. We are assuming that you speak very well. You speak very well when you are speaking in your mother tongue. You are able to express most complex thoughts and arguments in your mother tongue, and you are also able to get your meaning across in emotional situations, or have the gift of holding an audience spellbound when it comes to speaking in your mother tongue. But when it comes to your English language, you are at a loss for words. Your mouth goes dry, you don't have the right words, you are stuck, you are not fluent, or inadvertently you use the wrong pause, wrong sound, wrong intonation, wrong stress, wrong words, and your message has the opposite effect of what you intended it to be. So, let us begin by asking, is communication verbal, vocal, or visual? Did you know that we spend a lot of time thinking about the words we use, and we spend a lot of time about the verbal component of communication? Did you know what is the total percentage in a message of the verbal component? It's only 7%. The rest of the message, 93% of the message, is visual and vocal. Visual message is the most, takes more than half the part of the share of the message. 55% of the message is visual, and 38% of the message is vocal. So, when you look at a speaker, say when you meet somebody, you are traveling in a train, a local train or a long distance train, or on a flight, or you come to a restaurant and you see someone, or in a classroom you notice somebody and you see someone. How do you form an impression about that person even before you have exchanged a single word with that person? You form an impression based entirely on the visual cues about how that person looks. Now, I am not saying whether that person looks attractive or unattractive, but just by the way that person appears, the body shape, whether that person is tall, short, fat, thin, well-groomed, ill-groomed, dressed well, ill-dressed. On the basis of that, you create a certain profile of that person. You say, oh, that person looks like a banker. Okay, this person looks like a corporate guy. This person looks like a Jholawala from JNU. Who's a student, or who's an intellectual, who's a Marxist intellectual. So, you form these images by the glasses the person is wearing. You say this person must be an intellectual, or somebody has a cool hairstyle and you say this person must be working in an advertising company. So, the visual message is the most important one. And say you met somebody in the metro and you struck a conversation with that person. You thought, okay, this person is also a student and maybe we can make friends, and you struck a conversation. So, then the first words you say, you greet that person or wish that person and introduce yourself just by the quality of your voice, by the vocal cues you provide. You give away your your social and regional background. So, say you speak with a trace of an accent, you can betray which part of the country you are from, okay? Or your emotional background. Suppose you are not feeling too well that day. The tone of your voice, the quality of the energy in your voice will say, okay, you are disturbed about something, or you are not feeling too well. So, you give away a lot of cues to people just by, even when you say good morning, you give away a lot of cues. And only 7% of the message is verbal, on which we spend a hell of a lot of time practicing. So, we begin with saying that since the vocal and the visual aspect of communication is more important or takes a larger share than the verbal aspect, particularly in speaking, because writing has less space for vocal and visual or non-verbal messages. In speaking, when we speak, it's not just about using words. Speaking is not only about words, but more than words. I will now come on to the difference between speech and writing and dispel, demystify some myths. All of us begin with the assumption that speech came before writing, both in individuals and in individual societies. So, say a child, before a child learns to write, the child learns to speak. And it's also believed that societies, before they invented script or before they began to write, knew how to speak, knew how to communicate by word of mouth, orally. Now, when we write, our assumption is that writing is a transcription of speech, that we merely put down in writing what we say. And vice versa, that when we speak what we have written. Now, that's a complete myth which we need to dispel. And in this, I'm helped by great scholars, say philosophers like Derrida and several others before him, who showed us that writing, as it was believed earlier, is not a transcription of speech. It's not a transcription of a speech, but that speech and writing are two different languages. The way we compose messages in speech and in writing, we employ very different skills, and we also get a very different meaning across. So, this idea that speech was primary and writing was secondary, that was corrected by Derrida, who showed that writing predates, or writing is independent of speech. If it doesn't predate speech, but it's independent of speech, and its structures are independent of speech. The reason why I'm going into this is that speech and writing are seen as two different systems, and one of the most path-breaking research on this area has been by a priest called Walter J. Ong in his book called Orality and Literacy, where he goes into the psychodynamics of orality and literacy. According to Ong, I will not go into Ong's categories, the reason being that Ong's schema, in which he makes a division between psychodynamics of what he called oral societies and psychodynamics of literacy, has been questioned over the years by other scholars. So, I will not go into those individual schema that he has drawn, a very elaborate schema, but I would say that this basic distinction between speech and writing, even though Ong's theory has been questioned by some scholars, holds, and speech and writing are different in some fundamental ways. How so? So, first of all, we know that speech is inside the body and writing is outside the body. And speech requires face-to-face presence, and in writing, you have possibilities of communicating across time and place. Speech is transient, because the moment the word is out of your mouth, it's gone. You cannot recover it. Whereas writing is permanent. That's why we have a fetishization of writing. Some of us are very scared to put down things in writing, because once something is written down, it's indelible. It cannot be erased. Speech has immediacy, whereas writing has distance. Speech is personal, writing is impersonal. That's why when you want to convey an emotional message, you know the difference between sending an email or a letter, or going across personally to wish somebody, to congratulate somebody, or to commiserate with somebody in their bad times. Sending a letter is not the same thing as going across personally, because face-to-face dynamics are totally different. And speaking provides non-verbal cues, whereas writing does provide some non-verbal cues, but they are extremely limited, as opposed to speaking, where half the message comes through the non-verbal cues. Speaking is direct and writing is indirect. Speaking carries emotional content, whereas writing is objective. So, what I am saying is speaking is an altogether different skill from writing. This is the point I am trying to make aided by some very well known philosophers and scholars who showed the basic fundamental difference between speaking and writing, that writing is not a translation or transcription of speech, but an altogether different system. So, borrowing from Ong, but not borrowing all his categories, we may say that writing is abstract and speaking is concrete. Writing uses more complex structures, whereas speech we use more simple structures. Writing is formal and speech is informal. In writing we tend to use long words, and in speech we tend to use short words. In writing we tend to be more grammatical, we have the possibilities for editing what we are writing, but in speech once we say something there is no possibility for editing it, and it tends to be additive, it tends to be repetitive, and sometimes tend to be grammatical. For instance, if you were to transcribe my lecture, you will find that I have inadvertently, because I am thinking on my feet as I speak, I have inadvertently made some grammatical mistakes, or if I have not made any grammatical mistakes, I have used lot of redundancies, I have repeated phrases, I have said the same word or the same sentence in two different ways, so that it's very repetitive, it's full of redundancies, which if I were writing this lecture down as a lecture note, which I hope maybe at some time I'll be able to send you, in that I would carefully edit it for redundancies and correct it, edit it, and then send it to you. Before I conclude this lecture, I would like to identify why we need to focus on our speaking skills in English, because as I said, many of us in India, a large number of us, and it has nothing to do with our knowledge or our college degrees or qualifications. There is a significant majority of people who have mastered the art of speaking effectively, who have mastered the art of conversation, and you find such people are spread across classes, caste, gender, ethnicity, region, and so on, languages and so on. But when it comes to English, we have a problem. And why do we have this problem? Let's get the answer from one of the greatest writers of Indian English, Raja Rao, who wrote a novel called Kanthapura and who wrote another novel called Serpent on the Rope, one of the leading writers of the 1930s and later, one of the troika of the first generation of Indian novelists in English. It was Raja Rao who put it so well. He said, English, the reason why we are not able to express our emotions in English, you would find that many of you, in fact, I have the experience of listening and reading the writings of my students. I find that most of us are able to articulate very complex ideas, very complex arguments in English language. But when it comes to simple structures, making simple everyday conversations or saying the right thing in a one-to-one conversation, we end up saying the wrong word. Why is that so? Because most of us, the majority of us, have learned English as a second language, a language later in life, because the first language we spoke was our mother tongue, and we came to learn English later in life as a second language in a very formal context, in the classroom, or we learnt it through a textbook. It was taught in a classroom, unlike our mother tongue, which we picked up from the environment. We picked it up by listening to others. You listen to your mother say that nice round thing is a cookie or a biscuit, and you said, wow, I want that cookie. I want that cookie, because each time you said cookie, you got that nice round thing to eat. Or when you cried, your mom came running. So you know that this is how I can get my meaning across. You learnt by imitating people around you. So this is not the case with English, because English we learnt in a formal fashion. So while Indians are able to conduct sophisticated arguments in English to express abstract concepts, they are unable to employ simple colloquial structures in conversational English. So with that, the problems of Indian learners of English, some of which I have identified, are because we have learnt English formally in the classroom or through books. We are unfamiliar with English as it is spoken by native speakers of English, and we tend to use a lot of Indianisms not only in our usage. We use non-standard English. I'm not talking about English, but we use structures which are not English structures at all. But we also use words which are not in English words at all. Like we say, I passed out of college. Now, passed out is an incorrect usage. Because pass out means to faint, or we say he was in my batch, which is you instead of saying so and so was my contemporary in college, or he was in the same year as me, we say he's from my batch. Now batch is something which is used only in India. So as a result, our English doesn't sound like English at all. It sounds like very different English, non-standard English, because the sounds, stress, rhythm and intonation that we use is not the sounds, stress, rhythm and intonation used by native speakers of English. And we tend to transliterate phrases from the mother tongue into English. So because of that, we speak an odd kind of English, and we are unable to express simple emotions or instructions in English that may be expressed by colloquial English. So with this brief introduction, we will move on to how we speak or write using verbal and non-verbal symbols. And as we go along the course, I would focus, whenever I'm illustrating any concept, I would focus particularly on the speakers of Indian speakers of English and the problems that they have in each of these areas.
Hello, Mr. Vivek, sir. I am part of Springfest sponsorship committee, and I'm here to have a partnership with Coca-Cola. So, would you like to have that partnership?
Um, Let me introduce myself. I'm Vivek. I'm the
Marketing.
marketing head of Coca-Cola. So, give me some numbers, Rana, and
Um,
give me the perks.
Okay. So, what we would like to have you to be doing is we would have you as a title sponsor, and we would like you to host the Coke Studio events, which are going to happen. And the perks that we would like to offer will be n number of stalls, all free of cost, and also the advertisement that you will get, because there'll be about 20,000 people from around India watching the event.
And
So.
why is Springfest popular, and why do 20,000 people come?
Okay, there are n number of events. You have dance, you have people coming from outside like Arman Malik, you have the DJ Zaidan. So, to for all of these events, there'll be a lot of people from different parts of the country and different colleges, and also there'll be dance events. So, teams from different colleges will be coming in. So, we would, you know,
Yeah.
like to have.
Nice, Rana. So, how would you like us to involve with Springfest?
Yeah, your involvement would be the um, the posters that you would put, and the main thing would be we are having Zayden and Arman Malik coming up, so which are music events, and as you already have a brand, Coke Studio, we would like you to host the event for the night.
Okay. So, how would you like us to how would you like us to involve apart from the Coke Studio and
Um, Apart from Coke Studio, I guess the stalls would do. That's
stalls?
yeah.
Okay.
Here I want to say that ki, why Hindi should be globalized and English not. I think English is globalized because at that time our need, and they are master of all of us. But now we are also globalized. Today our India is progressing a lot, and in every field like that ki in space and in technology and in agriculture, in any field India is growing, and we are now globalized. The other country person want to come in our India now, they should learn Hindi. Not, it is not our duty that ki we have to learn English. And when we learn English, the point is that ki we have to communicate with British, you can say, or you we communicate. We want to communicate with American, because our need that time, and this time they are needed to come here, and they should learn Hindi, and we should only in our national language. And it is not our duty that कि हम लोग इंग्लिश को पढ़ें या इंग्लिश को समझें. और this time is a transition time for all of us, and we have find a chance to make our India globalized. And the main thing is that कि when I speak in English, I want to share my personal experience. When I speak in Hindi, then I proud of our country, and I can speak everything मतलब which I want to express you. And in English, I can speak and I can communicate with you, but a lot of things which is in mind I cannot express. And something is going to wrong with me कि we are speaking in English. मतलब I don't know about that कि what is this, but I don't comfortable with in English. It is not the task that कि हम लोग English क्यों नहीं सीख रहे हैं, या हमें English इतनी ज़्यादा boring क्यों लगती है, या हम सीख नहीं सकते. The task is that कि something is abstract to learn in English, and something is prevent to learn in English. I don't know what is this.
What is this? Getting elected president for 1,000 years, that H1B visa there. I work hard 12 years, then 4 years I work hard engineering, parents putting. Then I do engineering, then they say go to masters. Now what, I should get a job because new rule coming. $100,000. Oh, 70 lakh per annum. Who will give me?
I think we should not do like this, yaar. We should always think like that ki if she will come, then it is okay or not. But I was completely sure that कि ना वो मेरे साथ सालसा करेगी, और बस यही सब सोच करके मैंने
कोई बात नहीं, और कोई मिल जाएगा, कोई टेंशन ले रहा.
मिल जाएगा या मिल जाएगी भाई. हाँ तो सही बोल रहा.
You had a side.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was asking I was outing for like half a month before asking her for salsa.
All right.
And all you did was just take her without even asking me once.
I think you've misunderstood me.
I haven't misunderstood, dude. I'm kind of a person who skips meals outside, and I bought her silk for just asking her out, okay?
All right.
So you should have asked me first, right?
I know what you're talking about. You worked really hard for this girl.
Yeah,
right?
of course.
Let me tell you the truth. You know, I have
What?
been behind this girl for a very long time.
So what?
Too, like, you know, I've taken her to Subway maybe 6 times, and then I wrote her Foundry project, and I have the last semester. You know what my CG was, right? It was 6.4, and she got a 9.5. You know, and do you understand? Do you see the difference?
But that's not my problem, right?
I am not your danger. You know, she went with Vivek, man. She
What's
can do something. We are on the same boat. We are on the same boat.
Thank you. We meet again and we talk about how we encode messages verbally and non-verbally using verbal and non-verbal symbols.